This truck was meant to be the ultimate cheap tow rig. I only paid around $3,000 for it, plus a couple grand in tires and other miscellaneous parts it needed. And it's a 1-ton diesel pickup truck, so I think that's a pretty good deal. Unfortunately, it's still got some major problems. First of all, the thing keeps overheating. I have a really long road trip planned to go home and see family, so I need this thing to be reliable and not overheat on me. And then there's a couple other minor things that I'd really like to fix, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But overall, for today's video, I'm gonna try and fix everything I need to get this thing to be a reliable, long road trip vehicle, because I need it to be. First, some catch up. In the last video, I built this winch bumper for the Cummins Explorer, and then I used that winch bumper to load the Explorer up onto this gooseneck trailer, which I bought for that truck. The reason why is that my lease was expiring, and there was a house across town that had this massive garage available for rent. So the truck had a job to do. It had to take my entire house and move it across town so that I could move into this giant garage. All right, I'm estimating 13,000 pounds. Do we think we're gonna make it? It is all downhill, which should make it a little easier. Let's find out. We got lots of very hilly dirt roads to get where we're going. Slow speeds. Someone recommended that I kick it into 4 low for doing stuff like this. So I put it in 4 low and it's actually making a big difference. So thank you to whoever made that comment. Has plenty of torque with that 2.5 times gear reduction and keeps the RPM up, so we're staying nice and cool. The 4 low trick made sure that this thing didn't overheat while I was towing all this stuff across town. And I even found a broken down F-250 on the side of the road pulling a trailer, and it gave me enough torque to even pull him to safety. So I was towing my trailer, an F-250, and that guy's trailer. Does that count as pulling triples? The truck did its job and I got everything moved over, but I do need to be able to tow in 2 high and not just in 4 low, so I do need to actually fix this overheating problem. Also, it was a problem that just kept getting worse. Originally, it would only overheat when I was towing, but it started overheating even when I was just driving around town. Especially if I was going uphill with the AC on, this truck would overheat. I had 3 weeks before a 1,300-mile road trip, so I needed this thing fixed. The overheating on this thing's gotten so bad that I'm starting to get paranoid that it has a blown head gasket or something major. So first things first, let's check if there's oil in the coolant. I really don't know what I'm going to find down here. And if I find something bad, the whole course of this video is going to drastically change. I do have coolant inside of here. Looks relatively clean. Do not see any oily films on the top of it. It's a very good first sign, no oily film on the top. Now let's start it and see if there's any pressure coming out of the coolant system. Nothing obvious so far. Doesn't want to blow that rag off. Doesn't want to blow my hand off. Let's turn it to high idle, see what that does. All right, there were no obvious issues, no oil, no crazy blow-by. I'm gonna go through and inspect the cylinder heads, make sure there's no crazy leaks or anything, but as far as I'm concerned, that means there's probably not a head gasket issue. I can move on with what I was gonna do to this truck to fix the coolant issue. If there's something else I should check, let me know in the comments. And the way I'm actually gonna fix the coolant issue is with a bunch of parts. All right, here's the parts I'm gonna use to fix this thing, and basically, none of these are for a 6.5 Detroit, which is the engine I have. Instead, most of these are for a Duramax. Duramax parts are a great upgrade for the 6.5 Detroits because GM's learned some stuff over the years as they continue to design these things. Sorry, just noticed I forgot to open the fan. The one part that's going to be controversial is this water pump here. The reason that this water pump is controversial is because it makes a whole lot more flow than the stock pump. There's lots of people on the internet that are gonna tell you that if you increase flow too much in a heat exchanger, that you're actually going to reduce your cooling capacity. And Those people are wrong. It doesn't work that way in a closed circuit cooling system like this. It's virtually impossible to have too much flow to hurt your cooling capacity. Almost always, until you get into cavitation issues or crazy flow dynamics like that, more flow is more better. I was thinking about going on a 15-minute rant about this and telling you all the engineering behind it, but you just need to know more flow is more better. I'll put the equation on the screen if you don't believe me, and if you still don't believe me, argue about it in the comments. I'll make a whole separate video on this topic if you want. I don't mind digging into the technical details on this stuff. I've spent a lot of time talking to a lot of engineers about exactly this subject, and I'm an engineer myself, and for my day job, I design fluid systems. Just trust me, more flow is more better. 99.9% of the time, that's the case. So we got an upgraded pump that is better balanced, and it also provides more flow. We have a new fan clutch, and then we have a fan with more blades from a Duramax, because again, more flow is more better. That's true even for the air, not just for the coolant. Better for heat transfer, that is. It might be less efficient, might use more power, but it's better for heat transfer. These three upgraded components will not only replace outdated components on the truck that might be 20 years old and causing a problem, it'll also give me a lot more cooling capacity in general. How am I gonna know that it's more cooling capacity? Well, it's gonna be really easy to test because the overheating issue is so bad on this thing that just driving up the steep grade to get home, if I don't take it steady at 15 miles an hour, this thing overheats every time. If I can go 25 or 30 on my way home in this thing when I'm done with this, I'm gonna consider it problem solved. All right, I'm always harping on this, but the first step when repairing anything is having good service info. Professional technicians don't repair anything without factory service info, and neither should you. Step one would be to come to the diagnostic tree that says engine overheating and go through all these steps. This will test easy things like make sure you actually have some glycol in your coolant to test your thermostat and your water pump, and whatever's wrong with your overheating system, this will get you there. And then not only that, it'll actually tell you how you're supposed to replace these things and give you a nice convenient little picture so you don't run into those situations where you forgot there was a fastener on the bottom and you forgot to undo it, or use the wrong sealant, or simple mistakes that mean that you have to do the job multiple times when you really shouldn't have had to. Always use factory service info. That being said, I'm actually doing things completely backwards on this truck. I already bought all those upgraded Duramax parts way before the overheating issue got this bad. So I'm putting those parts in no matter what. Normally it's really expensive to just throw parts at a problem. You should actually have a solid diagnosis before you throw parts at things. But in this case, I wanted to upgrade the cooling system anyways, so I'm doing that either way. And as I take things apart, I will test them and make sure that what I'm replacing was actually the problem. Again, I'm doing it backwards, but we will go through the diagnostic tree as I pull this stuff apart. Do as I say, not as I do. In the spirit of actually diagnosing things, let's take a look at this fan. I already bought a fan clutch for this thing because I bought a Duramax fan and I need the fan clutch that goes along with it. But according to the factory service info, if I want to diagnose the fan clutch, one of the things I do is I spin this by hand, and if it goes 5 times around with no drag, then fan clutch is bad. Now, I don't know what no drag means. This is pretty loose, but I can certainly feel some drag. I'd say this passes, but unfortunately the service info isn't more specific, it just says slight drag. There's a certain amount of wiggle that's allowed on this, and then the final test would be that you run the engine with the radiator blocked, and once the engine gets to a certain temperature, you should hear this fan clutch engage, and you use a thermometer to check and make sure that it engaged at the right temperature. I'm not going to do any of that because I don't want to warm up the radiator before I pull it apart. That's just going to make it harder to work on, and I'm already going to replace the fan clutch. So again, do as I say, not as I do. I should go through all the diagnostic steps on this fan clutch before I replace it, but I'm not going to because I have an upgraded fan I'm putting on it either way, which means I need to put an upgraded fan clutch on. I'm going to start with removing the radiator. I want to do this so I can clean out the radiator and also have easier access to the fan clutch and the water pump. So according to this, that means draining the coolant, removing the shrouds, pulling the radiator. Let's get to work. All right, all the shrouds are out, radiator's out. I was gonna say that that was not the worst radiator removal I've ever done. It really wasn't that bad, except there was one hose clamp on the lower radiator hose that was just in an impossible location to access. I really should have taken the passenger wheel well out of this thing so that I could have reached that hose clamp. I fought with it like for an hour. It would have been faster just to pull the passenger wheel well, but I didn't, and so I ended up fighting with it for an hour. I've started to hate working on V8 diesels because I feel like to get enough room to work on anything in this, I have to pull the wheel wells every single time. On an inline six, you don't have all your cylinder heads sticking out into your fenders, and so you can access stuff without having to pull the wheel wells. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Inline sixes are way easier to work on. Oh well. Got a V8 for now, this is what I've got. I'll stop complaining. Let's get back to work. From back here, this radiator doesn't look terrible, or at least in person it doesn't look that bad. On camera it actually looks worse than it does in person. But then when you zoom in, I'm not sure if it's gonna come across on camera, but there is like little tiny grit filling this thing all over the place. You probably can't tell, but I'm shining a light on the back of this, and most of the spots on the back, it's not even shining through. It's totally plugged. So let's rinse this radiator out. This might have been a big part of my problem. See how brown that water is coming out? Mostly in the middle, the sides aren't so bad. Here's a look at what I mean when I say this radiator is plugged full of garbage. You see how between every single fin, there's just greasy, black, dirty nonsense? I don't know what all that is, but I'm having a really hard time just spraying it out. We'll see if I'm even able to get this thing clean. All right, it's time to bring out the big guns. The hose is not doing it. I can't get all the crap out with the hose, so I'm bringing out the pressure washer. Normally you don't want to do this because you'll bend the fins if you use too much pressure and then it's screwed, but in the spirit of it's already screwed, I can't screw it any further, I'm gonna give this a try. If I can't get all this dirt out, I'm replacing this either way, so drastic times, drastic measures. Getting somewhere. It doesn't look like I'm bending fins yet, so let's keep trying that. So I'm pretty sure the radiator was my overheating problem because that thing was plugged full. On top of that, I was also having some issues with the AC, and if the radiator's plugged, no air can get through the AC condenser as well, so it all makes sense if the plugged radiator was my problem. I think I got it clean enough that it'll work now, but if it doesn't work, I'll just have to buy a new radiator and replace it. For now, I'm hoping I got away without spending the money on that. It's time to move on to doing the fan clutch, and the water pump. These are the parts that are going to be upgraded to Duramax parts, so they should be better than stock. Between fixing the maintenance problem with the stock component and upgrading the other stock components with better aftermarket parts, hopefully I got this problem fixed. We'll see. Let's get back to work. There's water pump off, and I actually had to remove quite a lot of crap to get this to work. Basically, all of the accessories on this side had to go in order to get to this. One thing I noticed is it is very, very wet underneath this cover here. This was definitely leaking. So I don't know if that's an indication that the water pump was bad or if it was just the gasket behind it, but either way, there was service back here that was needed. Hey, from here I can tell I got some leaky valve covers over there. Probably gonna ignore that problem. So I've been cleaning up each of these water pump bolts, been running them through the parts cleaner, and then I've been scrubbing them off as best I can. Some might say this is pretty anal, but thread lock and sealants do not stick to dirty bolts. On top of that, dirty bolts have different torque specs than not dirty bolts. So if you're putting something together that involves some gasketed surfaces and everything, and you don't want to have to get back in and redo that job because your torque spec was off or because it's leaking because your torque spec was off, it's a really good idea to clean up your bolts. It's a really easy thing to get wrong, and it's a really stupid reason to have to redo a job, so clean off your bolts. It'd be really nice to have an ultrasonic cleaner to do this for me. All right, I got the water pump back on. It's on there and that's torqued. There's still a lot of stuff I need to reassemble to this engine, and one of the most annoying things in the world to me is you start assembling things, realize you forgot to put something on, and then you have to go back and remove all the stuff you just put on in order to put back on the thing you forgot. So I'm gonna show you a little trick to get away from that. In safety critical industries, when they're working to procedure, one of the things that the operators do is they do what's called a circle slash technique. What you do is the step that you're on, you circle. That's how you know what step you're on. You work the step, and once that step's complete, you add a cross, and then you circle the next step that you've started. This tells you, have I started this step? If there's a circle, I have. Have I finished that step? If there's a slash, I have. It makes it really hard to miss things because it'd be very obvious. I look back over this sheet and I see all the parts of the installation procedure. I clearly did because I circled and slashed them, including the tighten steps. You could take this even a step further and circle slash your fasteners or add your torque spec number on the fastener as you go, but I'm not gonna get that anal with it. This might seem like a lot of work, but slow is steady and steady's fast. So it's better to take your time with this stuff. If you skip something, it'll take you twice as long to go back and redo it than it would have done to just be anal about your steps in the first place. Back to work. Got a bunch of hoses and things to connect. It's running great. I'm waiting for it to warm up so the thermostat will open and then I can check the coolant level. It doesn't seem like the fan is running into the shroud anywhere, which is really good news. I haven't seen any leaks anywhere yet. Let's get this thing bled and see if we manage to fix this. The last thing I need to do is refill the transmission fluid. The radiator has a transmission cooler in it, so I lost a decent amount of tranny fluid when I did the radiator. Really, I should probably do a full flush, but I'm not gonna. All right, everything seems to be working, which is great news. You never know when you do a big job like that if there's gonna be some stupid thing you missed. Following service procedures helps with that, but you still never know. I don't see any leaks. I don't see any issues. So far it's not rubbing on the fan shroud, but time will tell. I'm gonna have to drive it around a little bit and check the fan shroud, make sure it wasn't rubbing, check the trans fluid, make sure it's topped off, check the coolant, all the normal good stuff. There is still one issue with this I wanna fix though. It's a pretty serious issue actually, but I'm hoping the fix will be simple. What I have you staring at right now is where the steering shaft enters the steering gearbox, and the gearbox isn't moving and neither are the tires. That is how much I can move that shaft without moving the tires whatsoever. This is how much the steering wheel moves before it moves the tires, which means the whole time I'm driving down the road, it's like a Mickey Mouse cartoon. This thing's wiggling back and forth like that. There's a lot of slop in the steering gearbox. Now, personally, every single car I've ever driven was a jalopy that had clapped out power steering, and I've never driven a Chevy with tight steering. So I didn't even notice this at first until my partner drove it, and then she went, "This is dangerous, you need to fix this." And then I drove it a little more and I went, Yeah, you're right. This is crazy. I better fix this. So I'm really hoping that just adjusting the lash on the steering gearbox is going to take the slop out, but that might be a lot to ask. Let's see if adjusting the gear lash fixes this or not. All right. That is much tighter steering. I can actually feel it pushing back. Everywhere I try and move it, I can feel the tires pushing back. And when the truck's running, which it's not right now because I want you to be able to hear me, but when the truck's running, these little movements are creating movements in the tires. So I think I nipped this problem in the bud. Hopefully tightening a little screw on my steering gear will prevent an accident. So that was a really easy fix. I won't know for sure until I drive this, and I need to drive it to test the cooling system anyways, so I think it's about time for a test drive. So my partner told me that the brake lights on this truck weren't working when she was driving behind me, but luckily I have this factory scan tool. Okay, it has a monitor for the brake switch. So my foot's off the brake and it says open. Foot's on the brake and it says open. Cruise brake switch. So it has 2 brake switches? Yeah, that brake switch is not responding. All right. I think that's problem verified without even having to pull this thing off, which is really nice. It is definitely the brake switch that's the problem because I don't see that cycling on and off. That was easy to diagnose. Also, just in case anybody's panicking in the comments, I am going to actually check the fuse before I just declare the brake switch dead. This is the stop hazard. Damn it. And it was not blown, I promise. I already looked at it. So it is the brake stop switch that's the problem, most likely, or a wire in between. Let's start with the brake switch. This is the brake stop switch out of the truck. This is pretty simple. It's basically just got this little button here that gets pushed when you push your brake pedal, and then that has little tangs that pull these metal contacts apart. So this is a very simple component. It's unlikely that there's actually anything like wrong with this. I don't see any broken bits of plastic or anything. But, so if you look at these 2 contacts right now, these are clearly touching. But when I put my meter between them, I'm either getting out of limit or I'm getting like 300 ohms of resistance. Even though these 2 contacts are touching, there's a lot of resistance between them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and clean up all these contacts. I'm just going to use a bit of emery cloth and electronics cleaner. I'm tempted to use brake clean, but I'm worried it'll harm this plastic, so I'll try and see if I can find some isopropyl or something. Let's see if cleaning up these contacts actually fixes our problem. Electromechanical stuff like this is kind of nice because you have springs and contacts and levers that hopefully just scuffing these up will fix it. Let's see. All right, that is a very clean contact. Let's put this back together. And there we go. We're getting basically 0 ohms. Cool. Let's clean up the contacts on all of this and see if that fixes it. It'd be really nice if it was a free solution. Remember, a lot of stuff can be fixed. It doesn't just need replaced. Hopefully I don't eat those words. All right, I got this thing back together. There's 3 positions in this. The first one, as you can see, is normally open. Nothing on that meter. The second one should be normally closed. Yep, 0 ohms. And then the third one is also normally closed. 0 ohms. So now if I put a screwdriver in here, I can close the switch and then see what the switched position is. This first one should be closed. Yep, 0 ohms. The second one should be open. Overload, out of limit, open. And then the third one should be open as well. Perfect. So that is this switch fixed. Time to plug this back in, see if it actually fixed my stoplight issue. I'm really glad I didn't buy a new one of these. It was really easy to just take this apart and clean it. And it taught me a lot more about how this works and what the computer is actually seeing in the switch. When I first looked at it, I thought it was really weird that there were multiple switches for a brake light switch. But now coming in and looking at it, I realized that it's all the same switch. It just has different contacts in it and taught me a little more about my truck. So sometimes it's worth pulling things apart and fixing them just to learn something, and I definitely learned something from this. So let's see if it fixed it. All right, here we are again, back in the car with the GM Tech 2. Let's see if the car sees the brake switch now. All right, brake switch open, cruise switch closed. Let's push the pedal. Closed. Oh my God, we've done it. All right, I can't be up here to push the pedal and be in the back to see if the brake lights are working at the same time, so let me set up a camera and YouTube, you tell me if it's actually turning the lights on or not. Ignore the beat up tailgate. I'll get to fixing that eventually. Brake pedal pushed. Brake pedal off. On, off. On, off. Please tell me that that worked. I checked the video and we do have brake lights. That's amazing. I didn't even know that was a problem until my partner was following me and told me I didn't have any brake lights, but that's a big safety hazard and glad I was able to fix that. Now that I actually have brake lights, let's go for a real test drive. I need to find the biggest hill I can and drive up it as quick as I can to make sure that the cooling system is finally working. So let's go do that. I figured I'd check the AC while I was at it now that I can actually get some air across the condenser. And this is icy cold. Look at that, I was getting like 29 to 33 degrees Fahrenheit coming out of the vent. That is the coldest that this has ever blown. And that's like the coldest I've ever seen out of an R134 system. Those are like R12 numbers. That's amazing. Turns out actually getting air across the system helps. That's gonna really help on these long road trips. All right, this is the hill we're facing. Steepest hill I could find. It's more than a 15% grade, I don't know exactly what it is. Usually only take this about 15 miles an hour, but AC's on, I'm gonna try for 20 to 25. Let's see if this thing overheats. If it doesn't overheat, cooling system's fixed.
If it overheats, his wife will be mad.
This is a world of a difference. EGT's at a solid 900 to 1,000 for 7 minutes straight, and the gauge is not going over 215. The second it starts to move, I hear the fan kick in and then it cools it back off immediately. This is a world of a difference. Makes me feel like I have a lot more power too, because I don't have to sit there watching the EGTs the whole time, waiting for it to overheat on me. Absolutely night and day. I've left the AC on this entire time, kept the hammer down, haven't had to turn on the heat once to get this thing to cool off, haven't had to pull over for overheating once. Night and day. Not sure if it's the upgraded parts as much as it is actually removing the giant plug out of the, leaving some smoke on this one. I should have downshifted there, but I'm holding a phone. I don't know if it's removing the plugged garbage out of the radiator or if it's the new parts. It's probably the first thing more than the second, but either way, night and day. I'm gonna set you down so I can downshift. I don't want to be too dramatic here, but I went from babying the throttle because it would overheat if I went anywhere near the throttle, to now I don't think I could overheat it if I tried. And I am trying, and it's not overheating. So this is a world of a difference. Truck fixed. Don't worry, nothing broke. I got done with that drive and I figured I'd pop the hood and make sure the fan wasn't heating and all of that kind of good thing. And one thing I just noticed with this new cooling system upgrade is it used to be when I put my hand here in order to pop the hood, it was so hot it would practically burn me. And this time the handle itself was cool to the touch. It doesn't get hot until way back here. All of this is cool and then this is hot, which is a really good sign because it means that we're actually cooling. I think the reason all this was so hot before was because the radiator was plugged, so all the heat was radiating up here. I think this is a really good sign that the heat's not just getting trapped here. I'm actually able to suck it through like the cooling system's supposed to work. All in all, huge, huge upgrade. This is night and day. My partner and I are taking a road trip on this thing in like 3 days and everything else is working great, so there's time for one final mod. If If you look at the windows on this thing, they are entirely see-through. There is no tint on them whatsoever. When here on Earth you get 1,000 watts per meter squared of solar power coming in, it's really hot to drive that thing. I've literally gotten sunburns on my left arm while driving because of all the heat coming in the window. Makes it really uncomfortable to drive through hot climates, makes it really hot in the cab, and we're gonna fix this by tinting the windows. Here's the one rear one we already did. So this is the rear, which is 5%, only allows 5% of visible light through. That'll keep it nice and cool back here, which will be great because we also installed a platform for the dog to sleep, and the dog's double coat shepherd, really sensitive to hot weather, so it'll keep her nice and cool. It'll also give me a place to sleep on long road trips if I ever need to do that. 5% tint on the back that we're working on, and then we'll add some 35% tint on the front 2 windows, which is the maximum that's allowed in my state. And that should make this cab way comfier to drive. It is nice and dark back here, and I think it's puppy approved. This will be so much nicer for road trips for the puppy to have this platform to lay on. Dark windows, won't be nearly as hot in here. This will be fantastic. And if I ever have to sleep in the back of here because we're on a long road trip or something, this will add a lot of privacy and be a lot more comfortable. All right, I said I didn't do this for looks, but that actually looks amazing. Really makes the truck look a lot better. So it'll be a lot more comfortable and look a lot better. I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect. There's a reason that shops charge as much money to do this as they do, and it's to make it look perfect. But for the purposes of keeping the 1 or 2 horsepower worth of heating off of us that the sun can beam through these windows, this is awesome. One thing I would note if you're doing this, keep your razor blades sharp, replace it often. The places it turned out the worst are the places where my razor blades started ripping instead of cutting the tint. So keep your razor blades sharp. On the road, the truck made it all the way to Buc-ee's, the obligatory stop during a road trip, and we can buy like a $30 lunch. So we made it pretty far. All right. The Buc-ee's rating is that the food's pretty decent. Probably go back, but it's super overhyped. It's kind of cool, I guess. The dog's staying cool back there with the tinted windows, so that's great. AC's still working, so that's even better. And I haven't even overheated yet. 400 miles into this road trip so far. No major issues other than a switch on the dash I need to fix. This is the grade I'm about to go up. Let's see if we can take it at 80. If we can take this at 80, the cooling system is definitely fixed, but overall, this thing's been great. 1100 degrees on the EGTs, 13 PSI on the boost gauge, still under 210 on the coolant for now, and basically 80 miles an hour, which is the speed limit here, by the way. I'm in Wyoming. I'd say those cooling system upgrades are making a big difference. And I'm doing all this with the AC on too, which is great. Here's all the trucks slowing down at the crest of the hill, but I'm not. I think that's a win. Quarter mile later at the bottom of the hill, it's already cold again, back to that 180. Absolute win. That cooling system's doing work. We're 1,000 miles into a 1,300 mile road trip, a few hours from home, and my partner tells me that her floorboards aren't hot anymore. She said that it used to be that when she put her feet on the floorboard, it would almost burn her, and she had to wear shoes in the truck while she was riding in the passenger seat because the floorboard was so hot. And she had told me that before and I didn't listen to her, and I should have. Because I think what happened was there was so much buildup of heat under the hood from the radiator being plugged that everything under the hood was just super, super hot. I think what was going on, and all the indicators were there, is that all the air under the hood was stagnant and getting super hot. Everything was crazy hot under there. So I should have listened, but the good news is the radiator is no longer plugged, and now everything is so much cooler now. So the cooling upgrades made a really big difference. It brings the temperature down really, really quick. But on top of that, I think the air under the hood was just all stagnant because I wasn't getting any air through the radiator. Huge improvements all around. This truck's done amazing. 1,300 miles is a hell of a test drive. I'm really proud of this thing. It's done awesome. 1,300 miles was a hell of a test drive for this thing. It's working amazing. I'm able to leave the AC on the whole time I'm driving. I don't have to watch the coolant temp. I can just keep the throttle down and not worry that it's going to be overheating. This thing did amazing. Now, obviously the plugged radiator was probably my main problem, but I think the upgraded cooling parts also made a big difference because I can just watch the coolant temperature drop from 210 to 180 as soon as I let off the throttle, and it goes quick. What's up next on the docket for this is I need to hook up the gooseneck, get my Cummins Explorer project car on the trailer and tow that thing around because that's one of the main reasons I have this truck and trailer in the first place. If you enjoyed my truck videos, I highly recommend you check out the Cummins Explorer. It's a 6BT 12 valve P-pump Cummins, the good one, out of like a 98 Dodge Ram in a tiny little Ford Explorer. It was a huge project. And if you like the truck, I think you'll like that. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me in my garage today. I hope to see you next time. Get out there and build something.